a brewery, a weaving establishment, a brandy distillery, and they even made cricket bats for the English settlers. William's younger brother, Francis, who like William had been born in Germany and knew a lot about the Germans, he gives a good description of them, which he contrasts to the British working immigrants, many of whom are the most terrible drinkers and would blew the whole year's savings at the pub. Francis says, now see here how differently the German labour in the colony acts. You never see a German in a public house drinking spirits. He'll come into town many miles afoot, carrying perhaps a heavy load of vegetables or whatnot for the market. And his day's profit must have been very good to induce him to buy even a glass of ale to wash down his frugal dinner. More frequently, it's a draught of spring water. Francis saw the prospect of a steadily increasing and sure independence ahead of the Germans. No wonder, they deserved it. In those early days, the Germans did more than anyone to feed Adelaide's population. These incredibly tough people, often women, thought nothing of walking 15 to 20 miles from Harndorf or Lobethal down to Adelaide, selling their goods and walking home again. From Lobethal, they followed a track down through the hills, always on foot, unafraid of the runaway convicts and assorted bad characters who hid out in the tiers, as the hills were then called.
At that time, there were no country stores and few vehicles, so butter and eggs had to be carried into Adelaide over the paths through the hills. I used to walk in one day and out the next in winter. Summertime would start at midnight and get home next evening. Winter nights we spent with kindly folk. The husband being a carpenter, his bench made a fine bed. Up at break of day with my basket of tea and sugar, soap and candles, I stepped out blithely and thought nothing of it at 15 years of age. At the age of 20, I married William Stauder. I was well inured to hard work, so it was no hardship to help my husband with his team of 4 bullocks. I drove the barrows while he broadcasted by hand the seed wheat. Harvesting was more strenuous then than nowadays. We used on very hot days to cut all day with a sickle and lay it ready to be tied. In the evening, we would tie with the straw bands previously soaked in the creek and stock it before daybreak of a cool morning. Now, with my journey's end in sight, I often wonder just what new discoveries await us.
By the end of the 1830s, the finances of the colony were in a desperate state. With a pitiful revenue of £20,000, Gawler was drawing bills on London for 10 times that amount. Meanwhile, the health of the founder of Adelaide had completely collapsed, and he was dying of tuberculosis. By now, Colonel Light was so poor that he had to make do by selling vegetables from his garden and even some of his watercolours. He made some country surveying trips, but his fevers were so bad that he had to give them away. And then in January 1839, his hut on North Terrace was burnt down, and he lost most of a lifetime's drawings, paintings, and diaries and journals. It was a blow that would have been severe enough even for a man in good health. He did manage to finish and see through the press the brief journal of his 1836 and 1837 proceedings. On 6th of October 1839, he died. McLaren, the tough Scots manager of the South Australian Company, writing to Angus a couple of months earlier, said, "Every day brings additional evidence of the superior wisdom of Colonel Light in fixing the capital where it is." 100 years later, Sir Archibald Grenfell Price wrote, "Light carried out the most permanent and successful work in the story of the colony." But his own best epitaph is in the last paragraph of his own brief journal.
The reasons that led me to fix Adelaide where it is, I do not expect to be generally understood or calmly judged of at the present. My enemies, however, by disputing their validity in every particular, have done me the good service of fixing the whole of the responsibility upon me. I am perfectly willing to bear it, and I leave it to posterity, and not to them, to decide whether I am entitled to praise or to blame.